I went and saw this at Agile on the Beach. It was the second lecture that I saw. It fitted really nicely with my previous head talk. I'm sure all of you have remembered and have watched on YouTube, which was about the hot meat chaser. This one is building on that to increase a little bit of knowledge. The whole field of neuroscience is growing massively at the moment. None of the information in this is really my information. I've unashamedly copied a huge amount from Elaine Sullivan on the Agile on the Beach. She does have a YouTube video of it and her slides, the presentation. She does cover an awful lot more stuff than I'm going to cover, because I wanted to kind of tie this into my previous talk and take it in a direction, but also make it kind of head forward specific, as opposed to sort of more generally as a consultant trying to sell their wares. Sorry, give a head talk. Right, so every good presentation should have good AV guys who's... Thanks, John, done a great job there. So every presentation you should start with what I'm going to tell you and then finish at the end and tell you what I told you. So last time I talked about hot meat chasers and how we learn, i.e. higher brain function. Today moving down the brain stack to lower level systems, think more networking, firewall, load balancers, the right sort of language for you lot. We're going to talk a little bit about parts of the brain, what neuroscience is teaching us, especially about the limbic system and how it influences us in our daily lives, and also how to work with your brain, not fight it. Again, this is the same theme as the last one, when we learn to learn. And also to realise sometimes why you feel like you do. A good touchy-feely part of this one. So what is neuroscience? Let's start from there. Neuroscientists study the cellular, functional, behavioural, evolutionary, computational, molecular, cellular, and medical aspects of the nervous system. There are various fields that focus on different aspects, but they often overlap. Next question, what's a neuron? Any more questions, anyone know? He put his hand up.
You've got loads of neurons in your brain, you need them, they all link together through like a kind of a main part and then a tail.
Yeah, very good. They do. They're literally like an old school classic nucleus type cell arrangement with a really long tail, and then that one connects to the nucleus of the next one, and they form up this link which passes information around the body. Interesting tangent. Let's go straight off piste on a third slide of the presentation. The enteric nervous system, a mesh-like system of neurons that governs the function of the gastrointestinal tract, your stomach, and associated paraphernalia. But what's interesting about that, I hear you say, or not? The enteric nervous system in humans consists of some 500 million neurons. This is the bit here. It contains 500 million neurons. That's 0.5% of the same amount of your brain, but it's 5 times more than your spinal column. It's that big, thick thing that runs all the way up your head and all the way down, which controls your body. There's more neurons actually within your intestines than there are within your spinal tract. And it's also got about the same amount as 2/3 the number of a cat. That includes the cat's brain and everything. So maybe you should trust your gut feeling more. There is actually genuinely a lot of discussion at the moment about actually definition of self and your personality and where you are. Everyone's always thought it's up in your brain, but actually increasingly we're starting to think, well, there's an awful lot of bits and bobs around your body that do this stuff as well. And neuroscience is sort of heading off in this direction and probing and seeing where it goes. So here's the brain, pretty picture off Wikipedia, got colours and everything. We've got the bit down here, spinal cord. This bit goes all the way down to the top of your tailbone and then branches out to control stuff. That deals with reflex actions. If you feel something hot, it goes all the way down through to your spinal column. Your spinal column goes, geez, that hurts. Passes the message straight to a muscle to move. Doesn't even go anywhere near your brain. That's the level of response that is from a reflex. Your spinal column makes a decision at that point. Next step up is the limbic system. And that does a lot of subconscious processing for you. We'll come back to that because we'll talk about that a lot in this presentation. And then right at the top, you've got the conscious cerebellum. These are effectively firewalls for each other. And if your spinal column filters out the message, the rest of the bits and bobs don't get to do their job. And likewise, if the limbic system filters out stuff or provides a response, that also means that your higher level brain, your actual thinking, you're consciously doing stuff, is taken out of the equation. You aren't doing that. So, your limbic system. This was evolved to provide a 3-second decision. So this is, tiger, type stuff. Except obviously without saying it. So in that 3 seconds, your body needs to decide, am I going to fight it or run away? In which case, my body needs to get ready to move as fast as it possibly can, or am I going to play dead? And there is another chemical reaction that happens with that. People who freeze when something happens, that's exactly that. This isn't you consciously making that decision. It happens without you doing it. We've all seen it when the kid shouts at the teacher and gives them grief. What did I say? And they're like, It's because the limbic part of their brain isn't allowing the smart part of their brain to do its job. It's going, am I going to die? That's genuinely what they're thinking. That's our brains are doing that for us. So fight or flight. This heavily revolves around adrenaline. Adrenaline is a super powerful hormone in our bodies. If you've ever had a huge spike of adrenaline, you'll know what that feels like. Yeah, like that. And a little bit afterwards, you start to feel really lethargic and shaky and just really weird. That's your body detoxing from adrenaline. Adrenaline is such a powerful drug that you detox the same as a drug addict would detox from heroin or something else. It just happens in a much, much shorter timescale. So it's super, super powerful. I don't know if any of you have got kids, but I know if I'm fast asleep in the middle of the night, kid cries, I am awake and stood up before I know what I've done. That's the limbic system. Just kicking off that response straight away, waking your body up, getting your heart rate going faster, getting all that blood swelling, rushing to your muscles so they're ready for action for you to move as fast as possible. So, brain plasticity. A lot of my last talk was about this, and I'm not going into great detail. Basically, a baby is born with 600 million neurons. That's about 1,500 new neurons grown per minute from the start of pregnancy. Just to note, in Elaine Sullivan's talk, she got that wrong. I did check the numbers. Paths are formed from learning. So when you're born, you've got this crazy, impressive brain for doing stuff, just ready to go. And you've got to use it. The more times that you remember something or think about something, the more it gets used, and the more these really strong paths in your brain actually physically develop. This is something that they're just starting to realize. This is making a physical change to your brain, which is different. Obviously, the more times you see about this, the better it's learned. So if you see something straight away, like, for example, where were the drinks upstairs? You know that because you did it. If I'd asked you that tomorrow, you'd have forgotten about it. If I'd asked you that this afternoon, you would have forgotten about it because your brain doesn't need to remember it. Because I've mentioned it now, your brain's going to go, oh, that might be important information. I'm going to remember that. As a result, I can ask you tomorrow and you'd be able to tell me where the drinks were. That's not through you trying to learn it. That's just making your brain work for you. All right, that was last talk. Stress. Stress, very, very, very important thing. It's all around us. It appears everywhere. Causes an adrenaline reaction. Adrenaline reaction lasts about 90 seconds. Can last longer, can last less. Life bombards us with stressful things. Social media, one of my massive hates. Facebook and other social media platforms hugely control this stuff. I spent 2 minutes Googling this of ways to increase engagement, and this is what came back from this link. This is how you boost engagement. Schedule your social media messages to send at the best times of day to increase your reach. Do you know what? That's the most stressful times of day. Nice infographic for each of the different platforms when the best time is to target someone when they're most receptive to your message. Write emotional headlines to increase shares and click-throughs. Again, there's a huge list of things there. You're the dentist. Write emotional headlines to increase shares and click-throughs. Again, they give a list of about 200 different things of click this magic link for some crazy thing. Increase your posting frequency to boost your organic growth. This means bombard people with information. It will start to sink in. Also, share your content more than once. This is getting you to see something more than once. It starts to stick in your brain. These are psychological tricks employed by social media to get more engagement. It's a really bad thing, but it's worth being aware of it, if you're into that. Interesting tangent number 2. This is the last one, by the way. Endogenous retroviruses have invaded the human genome. That's what makes us us. They comprise of about 5 to 8% of the human genome. Interestingly, to put that a different way, I'm 4 times more virus than I am man. It's about 0.5% difference between male and female, but obviously an 8% is virus. I thought it was an interesting fact. Heard it on Radio 4, thought I'd share it. Nothing to do with this talk. So, relatedness, really important thing. Our ancestry can be traced back through a common parent. If you look at Adam and Eve, not as in the biblical sense, but as in Eve, the first humanoid to walk out of Africa, there's also now we've got secrets of the human genome and all this sort of stuff. They're starting to realise that there's a common ancestors on the male side as well. They're calling Adam, obviously. So that makes us all cousins. Also, we all live in Cornwall, so it's probably closer than we think. The bond between mother and child happens before birth. They can recognise the sound of their voice and also others in the tribes before being born. This bond is happening before you're born. The people who are important to you and in your tribe are recognised right from the start. This isn't a conscious decision. This is a limbic response. The limbic system triggers dopamine and oxytocin. Dopamine, super addictive. Oxytocin, the love drug, believe it or not. That's actually what you feel what causes that response. In both parents and child, but also wider than that, grandparents, the cat, that sort of stuff. But wait, there's more. It still works, even as adults. If you go and cuddle a loved one for 10 seconds, it has to be a while. It can't be a quick cuddle. In that time, your heart rates actually synchronise, and both of you get a dopamine oxytocin response, which lowers stress. Not saying a word, not doing anything, just giving someone a hug for 10 seconds. It's just like a baby and mother interaction. That's just how we're wired up to work. Not necessarily required for stand-ups, but, Conformity. As much as we all like to think we're individuals, we're actually driven from survival to form groups, to form tribes. We look for commonality, people who are like us. We pass information to each other both consciously and subconsciously. Tribes cause us to behave like that tribe, both positive and negative. We've all seen teams that are all very, very negative. And often there's one person who's got a very strong negative response in that team, and that's actually spreading out to other people. I'll come back to that later on in a really good way that can be influenced. Our tribe reinforces our behaviours. This is a great video. It's about 3 minutes long. I don't really want to bore you with it. But it shows an experiment where they got a group of people in a dentist's. That's probably where John's going. And there's a woman who's the unsuspecting, target of this, and she's sat down, and a bell rings, and everyone stands up. And she sort of looks around as if, all right, fair enough. Next time, bell rings, everyone stands up, and she's sort of like this. Next time, bell rings, she stands up. Like, obviously, that's what everyone else is doing. We'll do that. Keeps going. Then, gradually, the people get removed. So, in the end, it's just her. Bell rings, she still stands up, looking around like, why am I doing this? But still doing it. Bloke comes in, unbeknownst to this. Bell rings, she stands up, sits down. Next time it rings, she stands up, sits down. He says, why are you doing it? And she said, well, everyone else is doing it. He's like, all right. Next time bell rings, both of them stand up. More people join this group, and eventually everyone's standing up and sitting down when this bell goes off. No one's been told to do anything. It is a learnt tribal response. This is the conscious relatedness. I'm going to call out tribe straight away. Tribe is a group of people. We are all part of many tribes, and all of these tribes have an influence on it, so don't think specifically this is around work. This is also around things you do outside of work, socially and privately. You're part of many tribes these days. And often they're very, very different from each other. So let's talk a little bit about emotional development. It takes place approximately 2 to 7 years of age, or some of us still haven't quite got emotional development right. We start off with, we've got needs. Little tiny baby, my needs, I need to eat, I need to drink, I need to be sick, I need to go to the toilet. That's about it, don't really care about anyone else. You hit the terrible twos. This is where they start to twig, hang on a minute, other people have needs. It's not all about me. I'm not the centre of attention anymore. And that's where they start stamping their feet and shouting and screaming about it. And they develop empathy. So I didn't know this in researching this. I've learned something with this. Empathy is about experiencing the same feelings as the other person. Yep, got it, I know that. No, mirroring the neuron response. Your body feels the same emotion as the person you're talking to. If someone is upset with something and hasn't told you that they're upset with something, when you're talking to them, you're going to start to feel upset about something. And you're thinking, maybe it's because I don't like this person or because this person's talking funny. And then you're going to go back to your team and you're going to take that with you. And this is going to rub off on your tribe. That you're all going to start to feel this emotional response. And you aren't 100% sure why. But it's because this first person with a very strong response has actually affected you and then your further interactions beyond that. Obviously, other people you bump into someone really happy, it's all fine, it's all forgotten about you, then mirror that response. Where this is super important to call out is if you're in that situation where you're super angry about something or super depressed about something, or there's a real strong emotional response. We've always been taught, don't share it, don't talk about it. Actually, the best thing you can do is say, look, I'm really grumpy at the moment. You don't need to give a reason, but just say that. And then the person you're talking to will get, oh, okay, that's why I'm feeling grumpy. It's because you're feeling grumpy and I'm mirroring that response. And that person then doesn't take that grumpiness to the next interaction. So if you're in a team that's super positive, then that's a real great energy kicking around. But if you've got some people that are being very negative, it's worth working out, why are they being negative? Is it something that could be influenced? And being positive back to them will have an influence on them back. Identity. So we talked about wanting to be a tribe, but also who we are super important. What's our status within the tribe? Are we just a caveman? Are we the leader of the tribe? Are we a farmer? Are we a hunter? Modern day, we still need self-esteem and we still need status. Enhancement of self triggers our reward circuitry, dopamine, oxytocin. I have to praise you like I should. Okay, that's a really obvious. I said I'd put quotes from songs in there. That's a really obvious one, sorry about that. What's good about Agile is that we all have a status within a team. You all are slightly different from each other and you're all probably the go-to person for a particular part of what that team's working on. Also, your team has a status compared to other teams. We're the team that work on this. We know about this stuff. You do get that status in there. Agile's really good for many reasons. It also gives us a response to our limbic system, which is super cool. Development of status continues throughout your life. Status and individuality are important. I'll come back to that. Also, humans are target-setting machines. We wouldn't be sat all here today if we weren't target-setting machines. You all wanted to go and do something. You all wanted to learn something. You all then wanted to get a job. You all wanted to work at head forwards. You have driven yourself to do that. No one forced you to do that. They're your targets that you've set yourself. Okay, not necessarily a great example, but we do set targets for ourselves. What's over that hill? What's further over? Where did that family go? Let's go and see where they went. This discovery, this exploration, this is what made human beings travel around the world and populate the world and conquer the world, really, if you want to look at it that way. Intrinsic motivation. Now, this is a super important thing. You do something because you want to. Kids play because they want to. You're not forcing them to play. You're not rewarding them for playing. They just play because it's good. They enjoy that. Education system in Scandinavia, they just play in the woods for I had to work it out. It was 2 to 3 years. Their first years of education are in the woods. Literally, they rock up to school, on with their thick coats, out in the woods, all year round. 95% of their education takes place outdoors. They are exploring. They are working as little tribes. They are learning those social interactions. They're looking to explore the world. They're looking to make risk assessments. Should I poke myself in the face with this stick? No, that's a bad idea. You'd be amazed how many teenagers I taught who would poke themselves in the face with a stick. Intrinsic motivation cannot be rewarded. It kills it. There's massive amounts of studies of this. They did a study in a zoo. They had a load of monkeys, loved playing with these, I think it was kids' toys, actually. And they started giving them a prize every time they played with the toys. Here you go, banana. Next time they did it, here you go, there's a banana. Next they went, I can't bother to do this now. The whole reason they wanted to play with that toy was gone because it was rewarded. And this is a real tricky balance in a job. How do you reward someone for doing good without breaking that intrinsic motivation? An example of this would be Google with their 20% time. Go and play for a day. Look at all the massive stuff that came about from that. Yeah, just being fun is enough. So this leads us on to actually what we're talking about. Let's see what time's back. Oh, not too bad. So there is a 5-point plan, and I forgot to put a note of who it was who came up with this. He's done TEDx talks and Google talks about this scarf. That's what it is. don't do much reading. And Elaine added on to this, who did the presentation, success. So scarfs is what she called it. So what is this? So certainty. Uncertainty causes stress. From the very first mention of a room move, adrenaline is released and stress increases. Every mention of a room move increases that until the full picture of when it will happen, who's going to sit where, and the actual move takes place, stress is increased. This is why we say we need to know what's going on. We need clear plans with things because we need to know that. That's our limbic system. That's us human beings saying that. We need to be certain of things. We need to know what we're doing and that we're comfortable with doing that. From the other side of the coin, if you do need to create change within a team, our team's changed loads within the last month. Sometimes it happens. There's nothing you can do about it. It's important you're really clear from the start exactly what's going to happen. But also if people come to you and say, oh, I don't think this is a very good idea, they don't necessarily mean this isn't a very good idea. What they mean is, I'm uncomfortable with the uncertainty that's taking place around this. And it's very easy to say, well, everyone's against this. And actually, everyone's worried about this. That's what the problem is, not necessarily the change. So it's responsible, if you're someone who's looking to bring in change somewhere, you need to be very conscious of that. Autonomy. We want to be the creators of our own destiny. We want to make decisions. We want to know the outcomes are actually because of us. If you tell people what to do, you're treading on their autonomy, and stress will increase. You're removing their status. You're removing their individuality. Also, you're kind of telling them, don't be part of the tribe because you do this thing. It's really bad. We should try not to do that. Obviously, the world we work in, sometimes people need to tell you what to do. But we should try and reduce that as much as possible. It's a core belief from the limbic system, and they will react. This is not a conscious, higher level reasoned response. This is before it gets there, the firewalls looked at this rule and said, I'm not liking this, and it causes stress. That's it, kicking off adrenaline. Sometimes only a little bit, but it does happen. Also, super important, trust people to make decisions and to find their own destiny. And we all know that's just common sense. Relatedness. We need to feel related to everyone else. It is a tribal thing. Our limbic system rewards us for that. In the agile world, we do a pretty good job of that. We've got small groups that work together. We've got tribes that pick up this. We do stuff at lunchtimes. We do head talks and all these sorts of things. It's all really good stuff. It's great. Remember, it's also more than just work. You can spend time with people at break times, during lunch times, and these sorts of things. But I think we do a pretty good job with this. Breakout areas are great for this, so really make use of them if you've got a breakout area in your room. If you're going to have a cup of coffee, go and get a cup of coffee, come back and have a chat in your room before you start work. You don't have to have it in the kitchen on your own. It doesn't hurt for people to discuss these things and feel part of a team, part of a group, part of a tribe. Fairness. The 3-year-old seeing another child getting something they don't and yelling, that's not fair, still exists in all of us, every single one of us. We've got an inbuilt response and we think something's unfair. We need to call it out. And when we see that something isn't fair, other people are going to be thinking the same sort of thing, but probably not saying it. By calling it out and raising it at the time and going, well, hang a minute, how come they got this? Often there's a very reasonable response to that. And they can go, oh, because they haven't got any kids, so they can go to Tokyo or Singapore. We should strive to be fair to everyone. It may not always be possible, but it needs to be considered and addressed as soon as possible. If you're starting to see unfairness. And success. Success breeds success. If you're working in a siloed environment, make sure you still celebrate your success. I cracked that bug, yeah, great. Or as a team, we managed to get the thing done. It doesn't have to be big stuff. Little wins are just as important. The more you do it, the more the limbic system goes, well done, Rob. And gives you all those nice endorphins and bits and bobs. Also, you just need to make sure that you've got really clear targets, because that's super important for measuring success. Don't try and make the targets too complicated. Make them super simple. There's a great book, I can't remember what it is now. It's actually on the shelf over in the other building, where they talk about setting yourself something that's very easily measurable. It doesn't have to be directly related to the thing you want to change, but as long as it's really easily measurable, you can say, oh, I'm going to do that. So maybe someone's got a particular phrase they always say when something negative happens. You can say, right, I'm going to measure that, and I'm going to try and get less than 10 of them in a week. Okay, and if you get less than 10 in a week, you go, hey, I did get less than 10, that was all right. Wasn't a bad week. It doesn't have to be difficult. This is personal, team, and much bigger. You can do that. So there's the pretty picture of the things again. Scarves and the recap. Think about yourself. What's your status? Where have you experienced empathy, good and bad? If you're talking to someone who's particularly negative and felt, oh, what's that? Or if you felt someone super happy and super pleased to see you, it makes you feel happy. That's that empathic response. Also, where have you celebrated success? When I was teaching, if there's a particularly difficult child in the classroom, I used to make a point of praising them as much as I could in the lesson. I saw a teacher that had magnets, and she'd take all of the magnets off the little tray, and the particular child she wanted to work with, every time she said something positive to them, she'd put a magnet on her desk. No one knew that she was doing this. I only knew it because I asked her and when I was observing a lesson. And that gave her a really visual representation of how much praise she'd given out during the lesson. It's super important. It's very, very easy to look for things that are wrong. It's really difficult to look for things that are right. As long as it's not kind of made up praise, simple praise is awesome. Sure, it is awesome. Think about the team. What is your tribe? Tribes. There's more than one tribe. You're part of many. Is your tribe positive or negative? How can you influence that? We've talked about empathic response. Subconsciously, you can change people. If everyone's super negative and you bring in positivity, it will have an effect. If one person is super negative and you all bring positivity, you'll massively change that person's response. Think about the company. Where do you see uncertainty? Are you communicating your feelings correctly? Perfect example, happiness survey. How many people does everyone else's opinion together was causing negativity? In reality, I know certainly talking personally, I didn't think it was that bad. I wasn't particularly bothered either way. But other people having negativity then made me think, maybe I do feel a little bit negative about this and start to look for negative things. It's very, very easy for that to happen. And this isn't a Toby and Craig thing. This is all of us. We all work for Head Forwards. We all bring positivity to this. We should all make sure this is a great place. Do we celebrate success? Are we fair? We all have a part to play in this. So last thing, remember, we're hot meat chasing target setting machines. That's the end of the talk. Thank you very much.